Flipside.io. July 14th, 2020. Student visas, sponsored by Thinker. Last Monday, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement announced that during the fall semester, non-immigrant F-1 and M-1 students attending the school operating entirely online may not take full online courses and remain in the United States. That was from ICE.gov. Last week, Harvard, MIT, and the state of California filed lawsuits challenging the policy. That was from AP News and Reuters. From the left criticizes the decision, arguing that it will deprive colleges of vital funding and harm the U.S. economy. From the right argues that foreign students are beneficial but worries about ICE unilaterally relaxing visa rules. Starting with the left, according to the 2019 Open Doors report on international education, there are more than 1 million international students in the United States. These students typically pay full tuition, which subsidizes the cost of enrolling more U.S. students. For public colleges and universities, the revenue generated from international students also helps moderate the effect of federal and state education budget cuts. It isn't only universities that would fill the gaps in their budgets. In 2018, international students contributed $45 billion to the U.S. economy through consumption and federal, state, and local taxes. Small college towns and cities reliant on revenue from the student population would be hit the hardest if international students, who are more likely to continue living in the areas where their schools are based while learning remotely, are forced to leave. That was from Margarita Konaev of The Washington Post. Ken Cuccinelli, the acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, told CNN that the policy change was meant to encourage schools to reopen, part of the Trump administration's goals of forcing American life to resume even as COVID-19 continues to spread and the death toll mounts. Foreign students who have made significant sacrifices and commitments, both financial and personal, to study in the U.S. are thus being used as political leverage. That was from Nicole Nareva of Vox. To be clear, the students now at risk of deportation are already studying and living here. They have received visas and passed all security and other protocols. We would kick out these students with no benefit to the United States while striking an immediate blow to our economy and lasting damage to the reputation of American higher education. No family and no country will forget if their students are summarily banished during a pandemic. It is the opposite of hospitality and decency, and it will stain us for years to come. That was from David Coleman and Ted Mitchell of The Washington Post. Let's look around. Who are our doctors? Who are our medical researchers? Who are our country's top scientists? Ask yourself, who works to make America stronger than she already is? The fact is, immigration is a mutually beneficial and beautiful relationship. President Donald Trump may think that with this new guidance, he is just hurting foreigners and immigrants. But as with most Trump-related policies, ultimately it is America who he is hurting the most. This was from Anousheh Hossain of CNN. American science and technology research is critically dependent on international students as its startup ecosystem. International students accounted for 54% of master's degrees and 44% of doctorate degrees issued in STEM fields in 2016 and 17. While 25% of founders of billion-dollar startups came to the U.S. as international students. These disproportionate statistics are even more staggering when one considers the fact that international students represent no more than 1 million of the U.S. college student population, about 5.5% of the total. The next time you get on Zoom for a meeting or a meetup, keep in mind that, for all its faults, the platform that is your lifeline for work or a family birthday or happy hour was founded by Eric Yuan, who is from China. He had to apply 9 times before he earned a visa to enter the US, where he got a degree from Stanford. And if you need to Google the status of reopenings in your state, or you need Lysol to wipe down the table before you eat in that indoor restaurant, the companies that let you get that stuff done are run by, you guessed it, former international students Sundar Pichai and Laxman Narasimhan. That was from Bhaskar Chakravorty of NBC News. Again, that was from the left. The left criticizes the decision, arguing that it will deprive colleges of vital funding and harm the U.S. economy. However, on the right, they argue that foreign students are beneficial but worry about ICE unilaterally relaxing visa rules. Higher education is simply not a zero-sum game, and academic research has documented this trend at length. For example, one paper found that for every 10 international students admitted to U.S. colleges and universities, schools were able to admit 8 additional American students thanks to the subsidization of high international tuition fees. That was from Brad Palumbo of the Dispatch. Schools will have to choose between reopening and holding in-person classes or staying online while losing lucrative international students. Many universities insist reopening their campuses and offering in-person classes is too risky given the ongoing pandemic. Data from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, however, show that Americans who are 24 or younger have experienced much milder COVID-19 symptoms with fewer deaths when compared to older Americans. For example, on June 20th, 2020, the CDC reported 2 COVID-19 related deaths of Americans younger than 24 and 512 deaths of Americans who were 85 and older. On the other hand, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, a steady increase in depression, anxiety, and suicidality among U.S. college students was observed. Scientists say for young people, socialization and bonding are not a luxury but are critical for biological development. Mental health experts believe that campus closing and pandemic-mandated social isolation have severe negative impacts on the sense of belonging sought by college students. The latest CDC data shows that more than 40% of Americans between 18 and 29 reported symptoms of anxiety or depression, almost twice the rate as Americans who are 60 and older. For American youth, continued social isolation poses a much greater risk to their health than COVID-19 does. That was from Helen Raleigh of The Federalist. Since it is commonly understood that the power to grant and revoke visas resides in the executive, those well-intentioned legal efforts made by universities to protect their students will likely be futile. The DHS rule states that students adopting a hybrid model, that is a mixture of online and in-person classes, will be allowed to take more than one class or 3 credit hours online. The vagueness of the rule suggests that in-person instruction can be minimal under such a model, where students could continue to take nearly all of their classes online. I encourage university faculties to adapt and think creatively about how to reopen their schools, and to try minimal in-person coursework rather than place all blame on the administration and engage in a long-drawn political fight in the courts that will likely be too slow and too futile to meaningfully help students and researchers. That was from John Hartley at the National Review. While media outlets are widely reporting this announcement as a rule change and students and faculty are expressing outrage at this supposedly arbitrary decision, the reality is more nuanced. F-1 visas have always excluded online-only programs, and in fact the rules used to be more strict, permitting a maximum of 1 online class out of a full study load. The federal government had granted a temporary exemption only for the first half of this year due to lockdowns. College administrators are correct to point out that these are still extraordinary times, and in many places lockdowns are still ongoing or even intensifying. ICE, for its part, naturally wants to avoid another case of creeping rule relaxation, especially if large numbers of colleges end up switching to a semi-permanent online format. That would leave hundreds of thousands of foreign students free to travel and possibly work under the table wherever they please. That was from John Jiang of the American Spectator. Now, from a libertarian's perspective, these rules will penalize students whose colleges have decided to go online, without securing any discernible economic, educational, health, or security upside for America. To the contrary, in fact. So why is the administration doing this? Basically, to purge as many immigrants from the country as possible before the November elections, and discourage new ones from coming in. Moreover, new students will be reluctant to enroll next fall out of fear that if Trump gets reelected, he'll renew his slams on them at the drop of a hat. This means that regardless of whether Trump wins or loses in November, these rules will succeed in deterring foreign students for at least another year, after 3 straight years of declining enrollment. That was from Shika Dalmia of Reason. ICE waived the rule for the spring and summer 2020 semester due to the COVID emergency. Given that Congress has now had 4 months to address that issue but has not, it's clear that ICE would be legally justified in asserting a continuing emergency that would allow it to ignore a binding regulation. Why are so many university leaders acting like the government actually enforcing the rule once the immediate emergency has passed is a complete surprise? Surely it was possible that ICE would agree to continue not to enforce a rule, but surely any decent university lawyer would have understood that it was not a certainty, and would have been advising the provost to make contingency plans for foreign students. That was from David Bernstein of Volokh Conspiracy.